Hello, dance people, and welcome to David's Dance Podcast. I'm your host, David Evans. Today on the show, we have a guest who is recently become a dad and is grappling with balancing, um, you know, all the challenges that come with being a dad, becoming a parent, um, and being a dancer and having a dance career. He's a podcaster and he's a rambler, and he is currently putting a podcast together at 10 p.m. while his little son is chilling on the side with his mama. And we're just trying to, do that hustle and get that podcast done, get it in the content, get the content done, get it in the hands of the people. And I guess is yours truly. It's a solo podcast today. You guys are chilling with me. It's been a little while since I've done a podcast, and honestly, it feels really good just to have a catch up with you guys. I love having the guests on. We didn't have a guest this week, but it's really nice to check in because so much has happened recently. About 4 weeks ago now, I became a father, and we welcomed my little son into the world. And it's been a pretty wild journey since then. A lot of ups and downs. In many ways, it's like living with a little drunk person. He's crying, and you're like, "Why are you crying?" And he doesn't know why he's crying. He can't hold his drink down. He has a sip. He's got free refills and everything, and drinks. And as soon as you put him down, just blah, 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 blah. He's just throwing up, and you're like, "Fresher move, fresher move." Can't hold your drink down. Then he starts crying again, and then you feed him, and he's like, "Oh, he was just hungry." You can't understand anything he's saying. So it's just like, a really, really cute alcoholic basically is what I live with. It's pretty mad. And so there's been a real lack of sleep. The paternity leave went by in just the blink of an eye, and it's been mad. And he's so beautiful, and it's been honestly crazy. It's been so much to process, and processing it from a life point of view, but also from like a dance point of view as well, has been really tough to be honest. There's been some real low points in terms of my dancing. um Before he arrived, I was in like some of the best shape I've been in a while. I felt like, especially with my b-boying, my breakdancing, like I was getting to a level and really having seeing breakthroughs in certain areas. That's in there. And I felt like I was on the cusp of a breakthrough. I think one of the things we struggle with as dancers, and I struggle with, is feeling that I'm good, but I'm not great, and feeling like I'm so often on the cusp of breakness, feeling like of greatness, feeling like, when are we going to have that breakthrough? And kind of through working with really specific people recently who have been coaching me to become a better dancer and fix those little things that were holding me back in my dancing, and training smarter. I've had such a huge increase in sudden growth in my dancing, and a lot of that came down to just this like 10-minute daily routine. Like we talked about with Haley Sellers, who we had on. And one of the things I did was I wrote down my goals, what I wanted to do with my dancing, and these are goals that I've had for a while, but I just haven't like reached. And some of them are simple stuff, like splits, front to back, and middle splits, getting them down, and I have good hamstring flexibility, but I've been a high level dancer for a while, but that's just a simple thing that I feel like as a dancer you should have, especially for some of the contemporary stuff. That lack of flexibility just really holds me back. And it just seems like such a simple, obvious thing that I could get and have and would just help unlock expression in my legs, both for contemporary but for breakdancing as well, because I'm a tall guy. So a lot of power moves are crazy difficult if you don't have that leg flexibility. You know, if you have the leg flexibility, then your legs work for you, and if you don't, then your legs are working against you, because you can't harness the momentum of the movement properly by sending it out to your peripheries, and instead your feet kind of pull you down basically. So, you know, splits was definitely one. Physio was another. You know, working a desk job as well. I often have like issues with my back because of that, and my upper back and my hips. Like I get tightness. And so I have like specific physio movements for that. So that was kind of helping. Um, you know, I do a short sun salutation, just stretch everything out, like a little bit of kind of low yoga pose sequence, just really loosen everything up. Yeah, and so and work on power. So there's 2 power moves, 2000s, which is like when you're in a handstand spinning, and another one, flares, that I've been working on. So I picked 2 exercises, just a handstand for 30 seconds. So you can come down as much as you want, but you got to go back up. And then the other one is a flare move, like training move, that is really hard to describe, but it was taught to me by Gabriel Infante, who I had on the podcast. And so the idea is just picking one move or one exercise, and if you can integrate them together into one kind of phrase, you know, so you're ticking multiple boxes with one kind of movement exercise phrase, even better, that you're working towards that goal every single day. I'm reading this book on sleep at the minute, and one of the things I realized that is that for growth in a physical domain, you know, learning physical skills, that in many ways sleep helps you consolidate and smooth out those skills. So if you teach you know, how often have we had this experience as dancers where you work on choreo, you don't really get it. You know, you struggle to get it, struggle to hit it. Your brain, you reach a point and you're just not getting better at it. And you go away, have a sleep, come back, and then the next day, like, you nail it. It's just like in your body. And while we sleep, our brain consolidates a lot of that movement and helps us work on it. You know, like it's a movement problem. It helps us smooth it and incorporate it into our muscle memory, basically. And so what I realized was, in order to have really exponential growth, it wasn't so much about the daily practice as it was about the practice between sleeps, you know. And you know, you hear like a lot of those like Navy SEAL guys or whatever, like, you know, it's all about the daily practice, the daily grind. And that's true, but it's not just about the consistency. It's about leveraging the power of sleep and your body and your brain's ability to integrate what you've learned each day into your skill set, that by doing that little bit each day, you're working with your brain's natural learning ability rather than against it. You know, so instead of doing 2.5 minutes of handstand on one day in a week, that is going to benefit me less than splitting it up and doing 30 seconds each day and having a sleep in between. And the difference I saw was huge. You know, I was suddenly growing a massive amount and seeing real gains in all of those areas and really working towards my goals and really getting somewhere. And I kind of had like a glimmer of hope, you know, especially with lockdown. We haven't been able to take classes for about a year. And it's been hard to really not connect properly with other dancers and to be able to push our learning. When my son was born, we had about like a 2 week period where 2 to 3 week period where I just wasn't moving at all. You know, not just dancing, like just wasn't leaving the couch. And even we just had no time and we were running on no sleep. And even when I had the chance to train, I had the, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, I just didn't have the energy in me. So finally 3 weeks goes by and I'm like, well, I have these little 20-minute slots where I can fit something in. So I'm like, all right, time to get my fitness back. I can't put in a proper dance session, but I can at least do something like go for a run. And so I go for a run and my body's stiff and it's cold out. I haven't done anything. I've just been sitting down for 2 weeks. And immediately my hip sees up on me and my lower back around my sacrum, it just tightens right up. I'm like, oh man, tightens right up on me. Whenever those, if you've had a back injury before, you know that your back is just the crossroads of all movement. Any movement you do is in some way your back is involved. It's the center of you. So, and I find whenever that injury plays up, it locks my legs down, because how it tightens up the muscles around there. And so that happened. I was really bummed out, and then felt a little bit better. A few days later, I was like, typical dancer, like, oh, I'm feeling a bit better. I'll go try dancing. I go have a easygoing session and throw my back out even worse, and now I'm struggling to walk. Like walking's very painful, sitting's very painful. The only things that feel kind of okay is either standing or lying down. So even just doing my desk job at this point hurts. And I feel so low at this point because I'm like, man, I was just about to have a breakthrough and really get somewhere. And then, my fitness goes out the window. I lose that daily practice. And you lose that momentum. And whenever you have injuries like that, where not only can't you dance, but you can barely walk, you're like, how am I meant to be a professional dancer? And I have all these like recurring injuries, injuries that through like physio I'm trying to address, but that desk job that I'm doing makes worse and exacerbates. And it was really demoralizing. Yeah. And honestly, I'm intrigued to hear what you guys have to say. Is there a moment in your dance journey where you was just really low and you were like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. This might not be for me. And I'm not talking about, don't get me wrong, sometimes with dance and stuff, sometimes you need to walk away for the right reasons, but you don't really want to walk away from this, in this bad place. And sometimes people do have injuries they just don't come back from. And they're just like, time to change career. Like that stuff just happens. But I'm curious, I want to hear more from you guys. We have some regular subscribers now who all over the world, UK, but I'm amazed at the way in which we have, listeners here in Europe and in the US, South America, Africa. I've been really amazed at how people have been chiming in to listen to the podcast and sharing this, this love of dance. So hit us up at David's Dance Podcast at gmail.com. That's David's Dance Podcast at gmail.com. I'll put a link in the description. And let us know about like a low point in your dance journey and how you got through it. And while you're at it, share a high point. Tell us about a time when you felt at the top of the world in your dance journey and you were like, wow, this beautiful thing, it's worth it. So I was at that real low point, and I have difficulty with certain mental health issues. I have like a mood disorder that gives me real lows and gives me times of real self-doubt. And one of the things I've learned is honestly to not wait for inspiration and to not wait till I feel confident or till I feel like, like all these kind of exercises where, you talk to yourself and go, give yourself that pep talk and all of that. I mean, all that's great. Don't get me wrong. You need that. That's very important. But I've realized that I can't, my moods go up and down. And the important thing isn't how I feel, it's just acting despite how I feel. Because sometimes I have incredible self-efficacy and I feel like I can accomplish anything. And on those days, it's easy to go and train. And then other days I feel like I'll never be a great dancer, and all that self-doubt, those insecurities are there. And I still have to be like, I'm going to go train, because when I go train, I feel way, way better. Because dancing makes me happy, yo. Like when I dance, I feel most myself. I feel so free. And honestly, it's one of the amazing parts about being a human being is that an identity is the way in which people feel most themselves when they're when they're lost in something else. When you're I don't know why that is, but for some reason, when we're losing ourselves in something else, that's when we feel most ourselves. Like in performance sports psychology, they talk about like flow, getting in that flow element. And so often for me, when I'm in that flow element with dance, where stuff's just happening, you're just in it, your attention's fully there. It's those moments that, it's almost like being drunk. You're lost in it, and being lost in it, you forget yourself. You're so absorbed in the activity. And I don't know why it is when I do that I feel like so myself, when you're fully committed your whole being to embodying something, doing something, and it's not just dance. I love cooking and baking. And when I bake breads. And when I bake, I often feel that way as well, But baking and dancing, like, they're not things within me. They're things I produce out here in the physical and the empirical world, But for some reason, when I think it's something to do with the selflessness of being human. And for some reason, actually, you don't find yourself by just always looking within, Sometimes it's through the act of committing yourself to something that's kind of beyond yourself that you truly kind of feel at home. I think it's kind of an amazing thing. It's so counterintuitive. And actually this whole social media thing of, you know, I'm expressing myself on social media, you know, I'm going to buy this brand because this brand represents me, you know, oh, I don't know. That's what a lot of kind of individualism, capitalism's about. It's selling people the idea that, you know, they themselves are to be celebrated. And it's true, but it's like attached to really, it's selling identity on things that don't really matter, you know? Like, yeah, like brands or whatever, you know? And I'm not saying like clothes per se, because I think people can connect with fashion in a really beautiful way, but it's more, you know, or cars, for instance, another thing you see where people are like, oh, I'm going to drive that BMW. And sometimes people really love cars and they can really find themselves in the act of being engaged with cars, being engaged with fashion. It's not these modes that are shallow. It's, you know, it's more of, yeah, I don't know. It's where you're just trying to like, you know, I'm going to build my personality by taking a little bit of this, a little bit of that, you know, comparing that with when you really truly lose yourself in something, in a process, not just like an idea, but a process, you know. Like I think about how you can lose yourself not in the brands that you wear, but in the process of putting an outfit together, you know, how you can feel so yourself doing that, how you can feel like yourself not in the, you know, the brand of car that you drive, but in the way that you drive it, the way that you fix it, you know. Maybe it's gardening, maybe it's whatever, you know, maybe it's solving math problems, who knows, like I don't know what gets you off, like, but yeah, it's crazy. Do you guys have a similar experience of losing yourself in dance? Because I think this experience, and it's more than just like dance, oh, dance makes me happy. It's like I'm able to lose myself in dance in a way that just makes everything in the world all right. And you just, when you're doing it, you're just one with the shapes you're creating, you know. It's not that when I'm dancing I'm moving my body, sending a wave through here, hitting that point. It's that by embodying those things, embodying the music, I become those things. And so I have this oral, visual psychosomatic experience that I'll almost become that experience. Yeah. Have you guys ever had experiences like that? You know, it might not be dance, it might be something else. Email us and let us know. It's really crazy. So anyway, yeah, it's been highs and lows. There's another thing I think that's interesting about as it pertains to social media. I was talking to a friend about this, and social media, and it's an interesting topic because we need it, right? I need it to promote this podcast, to promote my dancing. It does help me connect with other dancers. But I think there's a really interesting thing going on in terms of how social media is changing the way that we dance, how the algorithms, the composition, you know, Instagram is compositional. It has a user interface and it is curating dance without us knowing it. And it's crafting the dance world. Likewise, the algorithm, which is allowing us to reach audiences, we're changing the way that we're dancing to suit the algorithm, you know. And some people are doing it really well. And I'm not hating on them because they're producing dope dancers, like incredible choreography, you know, like these kind of like tutting videos. Is it Emma Porter? Like, you know, these videos that there's a lot of threading, a lot of geometry. Because one of the things that like having a like looking at, here's two things, right? That dancing on the phone, like through film, not just through film, but through like Instagram, TikTok specifically, is doing to dance. It's like, number one, it flattens it. You're generally seeing the dance from like kind of, you know, one angle, or it's moving around. And that's why I think all this like geometric dance, especially in hip hop, is like taking off in a huge way. Because visually, when you have like a flat thing, me like moving forward and back isn't very visually impactful. But if I can create these lines and this visual interest in this visual story that works in 2 dimensions, which is what this like kind of tutting kind of choreography does, and folding and threading choreography does, then I'm going to tell a better choreographic story, or a more visually impactful story, let's say. You know, and that kind of dancing existed before, but these platforms have really elevated it. You know, it works well for these platforms. The other thing is zooming dance in, because before, when you were dancing on a stage, for instance, you know, let's think about like ballet. Ballet was designed for the stage, and people are watching it from far away, and because of that, the movements in ballet are really big, like huge, and it's all about these like really big lines and traveling and moving across the stage, and and you know, it's also quite 2 dimensional because it's like a theater stage. It's, you know, people performing out. So ballet dancers really project in one direction. You know, contrast this with something like breakdance. Breakdance started at like on the streets and at parties. People are gathered in a small circle. And so when people are doing power moves, they need to create the maximum visual impact in a small space. How do you do that? You make the movement circular. That allows you to travel visually, but not go anywhere, and use a small amount of space really effectively. And so in this way, and also in like breakdancing, there's no front. There's people all around you in the cipher, the circle, watching you dance. So we created a dance style that was circular, because, and more sculptural, because it needed to, you know, it needed to work for the audience member over there, behind me. So you ended up with a style that was kind of very, you know, circular, worked in a small space, and was multi-dimensional, which is also why I think a lot of hip hop doesn't, and breakdancing doesn't always struggles to be converted to the stage, or when it's on the stage, it looks completely different, because you're taking something that was created in one spatial context and putting it in another space. And often that's why a lot of hip hop you see on stage for the first time, sometimes hip hop choreo struggles because it looks small on stage, because hip hop dancers aren't used to traveling. We're used to freestyling in tiny spaces. And what we're seeing now is we're seeing an even smaller space, the space of a screen. And because of that, we're zoomed right up. But then really small movements, you know, you got people dancing with their eyebrows, their mouth in the lyrics, doing these little, like, you know, kind of popping transitions, dancing with their fingers, doing like finger tutting. And if you were doing like, you know, finger tutting on a big stage, like a ballet context, That's not going to work. People are going to be in the back, like squinting their eyes, like, what is he doing? Like, is this guy, what is he doing? Is he like pretending to play the flute? Like, I don't get it. But then you see that on like Instagram and we're zoomed right in so that little movement of the body takes up a whole screen and it looks dope. And people are really good at it. And so I think it's really interesting because now we have this situation where new ways of dancing, new dance cultures are emerging, and our social media is crafting the way that we dance, and that happens in the way that we choreograph. And even for me, like, there's that 3-second rule on social media. Like, if you don't catch someone in the first 3 seconds, they're not going to watch the rest of your video, because we're designed to scroll. So we look, as a comment, no, and then our natural reaction is just to scroll through. And so it's really hard. You have to grab people immediately. And if I'm choreographing for anything else, like, I used to post videos where the cool thing happened at the end, because that's how you would put a show together. It starts off light, it builds, there's a climax, and then it resolves somehow, like how you tell a story. And now for a lot of like social media, because attention is so short, we're putting the climax right at the front. And so now I'm posting videos, and instead of, building up to the big moment, I put the big moment right at the top, and then have some other dancing after that. Because so it's changing the way that I'm editing my dance, and the way that I'm thinking about choreography, and the way that I'm curating my own improvisation to post. I post mostly improvs, freestyles, and it's making me edit those in a new way. So it's changing the format. And I'm not saying any of this is bad. It's just like having an awareness of like what's going on, that the future of dance is going to look very different. And it's going to look very different because these platforms are helping dance reach more people, but they're also creating new forms of movement, highlighting new approaches to dance. And a lot of that's really beautiful because we're seeing dance in a new way. And, people who love it can check it out. And it's helped promote a lot of dance makers, and it's given them careers and independence in their businesses. And it's allowed them to make a job out of this. And it's allowed a lot of, even dance makers who make touring live work, it's allowed them to get a following that extends beyond traditional marketing, and in that way it's given us, more independence as artists. Like, I'm grateful for podcasting, because this has allowed me to create something. I didn't have to ask anyone for permission to do this. I didn't have to go to an organization and say, will you hire me as a podcaster? I just started a podcast. And now that I've started it, this will be the 25th episode, I've had a lot of support from people, and people in the industry bigging up the podcast and helping me out, being guests, or, just liking and sharing it. And it's like, in so many ways, sometimes you just got to get your own thing going, just be entrepreneurial. But I can't say it's not been hard. Like, this has been a huge commitment. A huge commitment. Way more than I thought. I didn't realize I was crazy until I interviewed Rachel last week. Rachel Aldekin, who's also a podcaster. And realizing that she like had a lot of help. She's smart. she got help to start the podcast, from like technical help from other people. And she only puts out a few podcasts now and then. And here's me like, oh, we're going to put out, with already like a full-time job, other dance stuff going on, all of that. Like, oh, we're going to put out one each week. Not realizing that this podcast takes me 2 full working days each week to produce. I put, 7 to 14 hours into each podcast. There's a lot of areas like the prep and the marketing that I just hugely am promoting that I just hugely underestimated, as well as certain like aspects of the editing, which, I do by myself. Anyway, but yeah, as part of that, like what I'm saying is I'm super appreciative to the subscribers and the people who are chiming in each week. You guys mean so much to me. I'm so grateful, because this podcast would exist without the listeners. And I'm really just interested to hear from you more. And so leave a comment, leave a review. Hit us up on social media. I'll put my social media below. Dance Across Mediums. Hit us up on there. Tell us what you think. Ask us questions. Tag people who you want to be on the podcast. Yeah. But back to that question. What do you guys think the future of dance is? Social media, digital, all this is changing dance so much. And I'd love to hear from you, and, tell me how you think dance is changing. And is it changing for the better, for the worse? Is it just different? Let us know. All right, I'm going to sign up there, but I'm grateful for you guys, and we'll see you next week. Next week we got Deepraj Singh, and this guy's just amazing. I cannot wait to honestly talk to him. He's just the nicest guy, first of all. And he's such a dope dancer and has a really interesting career. And I think you guys are going to like love hearing about like his journey and stuff. So I'm excited to talk to him this coming weekend. There's so much going on. We're also moving house this weekend. So yeah, it's pretty crazy, but I'm appreciative. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week. Peace.